Hi, everyone. Good morning. Wow. I had the brilliant idea. It was so nice and cool on my deck this morning that I would give the lecture on the deck. So here I am, and here we are. And hey, there you go. There's all sorts of lighting out here. What are we going to talk about today? Etiology versus nosology. When I was at Hopkins, that's all we talked about. What does something look like as opposed to what causes it? So the good thing to talk about with COVID-19, there are a lot of examples, especially I have my master's in mental health science from Johns Hopkins. Mental health, there are no blood tests for most of these alleged mental illnesses. However, if you look, and the mental illnesses have a set of symptoms, right? And that's the nosology of it. This is what it looks like. It's like they refer to it often as a bird guide, identification guide, rather than what is this bird, what does it feed on, where did it come from, what are its parents, what was its environment, etc. Speaking of birds, there's one right back there. See that little puppy? Here we go. All right. Birds are a good example. And if we look at Darwinism, we see those changes in the beaks depending on what the bird is fed and how it is nourished and the environment that it lives in. So today we're going to talk about COVID in that regard too. This is from yesterday. I did make one speaking that I know of, that the manganese in the bottom of the ocean with those metals, those are the elements for mitochondria, not manganese. I sometimes get manganese and mitochondria mixed up. I say them together all the time. So I don't think this lecture will be quite as interesting, but it may be a little more understandable. So if we look at, let's take a mental health example: stress, pressured speech. That's one of them. You also get that in singers, because singing is pressured speech, and if you've been singing, that speech is going to stay pressured, just because those muscles are fired up. Does it mean that there's this fancy bipolar, right? Everyone's got it. It's kind of some people talk about it like it's, makes them special or something. But if you look at the symptoms of stress, insomnia, apathetic, depression, etc. You go down the line, you have the symptoms of stress, like every single one pair with bipolar. So is it stress or is it bipolar? That's a difference between, so the nosology, like what you see just past your nose, are all these symptoms of stress that are also the symptoms of bipolar, and they're easily mixed up. You could do the same with dehydration. And delirium, dehydration and Alzheimer's, dementia, which you're getting the symptoms of delirium. You have delirium here and dementia here. Well, if someone's dehydrated and you give them all these alleged tests for dementia, you're going to find dementia, but it's really dehydration that causes confusion very quickly. Very important distinction. And most of these things are influenced by drugs and alcohol. Right? So we want to look at these symptoms. All these symptoms just carry over from one thing to the other. So what's the goal? You get rid of the drugs and alcohol, and what have you got left? Say we're back at stress and bipolar. Or dementia, even worse. No tests for these things. We do have tests for COVID, and that's a whole different story about who's getting what and to what degree are they getting what. Even blood type they're looking at now. So we see the nosology, that people who with O blood type don't seem to get it quite as much. I don't know if it's a significant finding, but Uh, and so that's the nosology. If you have a certain blood type, you have a little bit more propensity to get it. That doesn't mean if you have that blood type, you're going to get it. So it's not just the blood type. It's not just pressured speech. If you're an opera singer, that doesn't count. Insomnia. If you drank 5 cups of coffee at 6 p.m. every evening, that doesn't count. That's not part of any disease. It's just an environmental aspect. We're sitting out here in traffic today. I'm speaking louder because there's traffic in the background. That's pressured speech, but it's not a symptom of any disease. So that's nosology and ignorance of people who are armchair diagnostics. And that's a whole nother set of lectures. Proxy diagnosis, bogus proxy diagnoses. It's rampant, it's rife, and it needs to be checked and accounted for. So you want to get rid of the drugs and alcohol. You want to get rid of the other causes of stress, alcoholic parents, a dysfunctional household, or metals in the drinking water, any number of things that are causal, which brings us to ETI. So it's not really bipolar or dementia. It's stress, dehydration, drugs and alcohol, low standard of living, which is causal to bad drinking water, bad poor nutrition, too much noise pollution, all sorts of things cause the nosology of bipolar and dementia and other things. Allergies, for instance, cause some of the nosology, the symptoms, like it's right at your nose. Oh, they're coughing. They must have COVID. No. There are a lot of other things. So today we want to talk about COVID nosology and COVID etiology, which is what I've been talking to you a lot about. Anyway, we miss our birds, huh? We need to see the birds, don't we? Do we still see them? I can't tell. Yeah, there they are. Okay, close enough. So good. All right. So COVID-19, we have a set of nosology. And I was thinking about this last night because this was originally presented, and it still is considered primarily nosology and etiology. What's really going on? What's really going on is the etiology. Nosology is what appears to be going on. This person appears to have dementia. They're forgetting a lot. Whatever. Well, they've got a lot on their mind, all sorts of stuff. You have to look at what is maybe causing that as a scientist, as a medical professional. I'm drinking from my regift coffee cup from my sister a couple of years ago. So the nosology of COVID is a pulmonary disease. It's a pulmonary disease. Now, is it? Actually, it incubates, and the etiology is that the virus incubates in the lungs. We've talked about that a lot. So it's not necessarily a pulmonary disease, just like pregnancy is not it's a condition for birth and humans to, get out here. But it incubates in the lungs. So it's not a pulmonary disease. It incubates in the lungs. You see the difference there? It's they say it's a hypoxia, say it's a hypoxic disease, but it is a mitochondrial distress. It's distress. The etiology. How do we prevent it? We look at the mitochondria. How do we prevent it? We bolster the lungs so that it doesn't have a chance to get in. So the nosology is what it looks like. And we got blood clots that will kill us. So we're looking at things that I guess that will kill us. Blood clots. And so when it incubates in the lungs, it pulls our oxygen down. That causes mitochondrial distress. That causes uncontrolled copper. Right? So that will cause blood clots. So a lot of things, blood clots come from nutrition and things like that. So there's a propensity, but to me, as I see it, it is this copper. Because the mitochondria are in distress, they are not regulating copper. So copper's running loose, and copper is very causal. Copper is causal to blood clots. So it is the virus that has emerged to move in on our current status as humans, which, let's face it, we are stressed, hypoxic, obese for the most part. These are the people who are getting it, and aging is not what it used to be. We're living longer, and we're bringing all this stuff with us. And when it gets to this point, the system has so broken down that this virus will move in and just, it's an easy target for the virus. So let's go on with the nosology. We have skin lesions, right? Skin, let's call them lesions. And if you look at low zinc, which the mitochondria also control the zinc. And the zinc is pretty much kept locked up until it's time for cell death. This is a lock and a key. So zinc is kept locked up, and if mitochondria aren't working, this stays locked up. And low zinc is going to cause these lesions. I mean, this is hypothetical but grounded hypothetical. That means there are theories and science behind this. Of course, there are a lot of things floating out there, and they may combine, but this is all part of the etiology. So this is the etiology that I am presenting to you, as opposed to the nosology of there's pulmonary distress, there's hypoxia, there's blood clots, there's skin lesions. So that's what it looks like. Let's put a big fat nose here. So, looking past the nose in many things, including dementia and many mental illnesses, looking, at autism, just because they're different from how one person has decided life needs to look, doesn't mean that they're not the one with the problem. You know what I'm saying? So if I've got a problem with somebody, I'm going to look at my problems first. And if I think I'm an armchair diagnostician, I need to do my research. I do need to do a lot more and be open-minded, innocent until proven guilty, sane until proven insane. That means proof is in science. So thank God for science. Okay, what else have we got here? Skin lesions. We have new, what do they call it with the blood, creating vascularization, vascular and hallucinations, vascular growth. I forget what it's called right now. Vascular growth. Well, that, from my understanding, has an association with these metals too, particularly manganese, I believe. I believe manganese is involved in that. Also, and all this loose iron that's running around, it's looking for a home, and the vascular growth. That means new blood vessels are forming in the lungs. There's finding that's really strange occurrence. It's like the blood system is desperately looking to pick up oxygen and take it to the rest of the body. So, I'm trying to think where we're going to go from here. There's several more that we could pair with what it looks like and what it is. What is causation? What is causal? What is causal to this so-called mental illness? To attention deficit's a big one. You got parents who drink, hanging out, don't want to really pay attention to the child, aren't really parenting, and they go to the doctor and say, "Oh, my kid has attention deficit disorder. Give me a pill so that I can keep drinking and doing my stuff." That's not the problem. So that's the difference between a parent going in and saying, "Give me Ritalin, attention deficit," when it's really bad parenting. We can put that ADD is the nosology, but really the causality is bad parenting. Right? And there are many, many, many examples. I'm sure you could find many. So I just wanted to talk about the difference between nosology, which is can't see past your own nose, and sitting on the diagnostic throne. And that goes for many things, not just, COVID is presenting as a pulmonary disease. Well, once it gestated, just like humans, once it incubated and gestated, it really became a hypoxic disease due to mitochondrial distress. Everything's moving towards the mitochondria. Then we started seeing blood clots. This is from the mitochondria. Because there was no oxygen, the mitochondria were distressed and they're blood clots. Skin lesions, because there was no oxygen, the mitochondria were distressed, didn't control copper, and it didn't had lost its keys to the zinc release to kill off things. And these, we've seen vascular, new veins in the blood and such, and I believe that's manganese thing. And it pairs over to many, many other diagnostics. I know when I went to Johns Hopkins, my colleagues would say the first thing they tell you in first medical class, they make it clear as day. Everything you're going to hear today is going to be obsolete in 50 years. Now that's Johns Hopkins. I don't know if all medical trainings classes begin with that. I would imagine that happens at Harvard, hopefully at Yale, hopefully at Mount Sinai, some of the the best top tier, MD Anderson, things like that. They're going to say what we know today is going to, most of it's going to be obsolete as you move forward. So keep an open mind, and that's the goal. Keep an open mind, because we want a cure to these things, including attention deficit disorder. I'm a big believer in parenting lessons. You're going to have a bunch of kids learn how to parent. If you want any sort of sustenance from government especially, or whatever. And, that's kind of happening in its own slow way. So I think that's about it for the etiology and nosology part of it. It's an important distinction to make between what something looks like. Remember that cartoon where the Pepe Le Pew, a black cat, accidentally walked under somebody painting a white paint and had got a stripe on her back, and this poor black cat was pursued by Pepe Le Pew. He thought she was a skunk because she had a white stripe. And that's what a good scientist does. It looks at causation. It looks at ill-motivated. Sometimes where there's follow the money. Where there's money, sometimes things get. We don't even know we're thinking strangely. Um, Adult children of alcoholics is another big example. I've got that in my own family. There are some serious pathologies, and it takes sometimes a lifetime of understanding and search and more search and research to understand that they're not bad people, they're sick people. And yet children are the innocent ones that sometimes get misdiagnosed, medicated, that makes things worse. And this pandemic is, as far as I can see, let's go back to what we always say. We evolve mitochondria are our friends, plus humans, plus biological life, biogenesis equals, humans, right? Here we are. Look at our potential. We use 10% of our brain cells over the course of a lifetime. I'm trying to bump that up to maybe 12, 13. Music helps. Good choices help. Good mentors help. Good support systems help. Let the bad support systems just kick you forward and leave them behind. This mitochondria is oxygen loving. Oxygen, oxygen, oxygen. Has been for millennium, many millions of years. We have evolved over millions of years. It's taken a long time to get to where we are. In the last 2 years, we have completely reversed the planet. We've reversed it in many ways. We've destroyed the clean water supply. Our water is full of so many things, toxins, chlorine. And of course, we're all familiar with global warming and those effects and pollution. I'm looking over to my left here. I can see the mountains every day, cloudy, sunny. I can see them again. The Shenandoah Blue Ridge Mountains. I've been living here for over 2.5 years. Couldn't see them until the pandemic and the fog lifted. So wonderful. Lift that cloud of pollution. And so we have a chance to bounce it back up. And if we bounce it back up and let it bounce back up, I believe this virus will go away, because it will lose it's going to take some people with it, because it's moving in on what we have created, which are inactive, obese, stressed adults living in plastic boxes. We live outside of, we'll see as the demographics come along what the bigger picture is. And that gets into epidemiology. Let's talk about epidemiology. So we have restored the planet. It has bounced back quickly, I've found. Industrialization has made a mess, but we've given it a breather to some extent, and it has really bounced back, as I've seen. I've never seen anything. I wouldn't have expected this. As far as the trees are just teeming with growth, and the air this is the coolest summer I've had in a while. Very grateful for that. So the last thing I was going to talk to you about is having gone through, I forget now, it's my pace, enjoying this nature, and things become less rushed too. So, the thing I was going to talk to you about could be a whole different lecture, and it will come back. It's in the C drive. It's not all on the desktop. So today, I'll share with you the beautiful botanical garden I have on my deck. I'm enjoying it very much this year. I took a tube down the Shenandoah River the other day, and that was fascinating. That going down the Shenandoah River, we went about a mile an hour. I couldn't control that river. I had a tube, and it was me in that tube. And I went with a friend, and um, most I could do is just sit and wait. You see these turtles sitting on the logs. They go out there, get the sunshine, enjoy the weather, the breeze. It's olfactory, and just wait. And that's okay. That's how we evolved. We evolved deindustrialization. We industrialized and have given this virus a place to live in those populations that it's hitting so hard. The happy hypoxics don't even realize they're not breathing. So there's so much to learn from these tragic disease models. And here we are. Here I am trying to work with what there is to be learned. So on that note, I guess I'll close out. I did it a little early this morning. I have a 9 o'clock appointment, so I'm kind of off my regular routine with this. And we will pick it up tomorrow. And I will talk about nosology again, and we'll talk about etiology again, and epidemiology. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Epidemiology. All the ologies. All the blinkenologies. Oh my gosh, ologies, lolly. Yeah, lots of ologies. Epidemiology. That means looking at a lot of people, and we're getting those numbers. We'll talk about epidemiology because these things are starting to come in. That means we're not just looking at one case. You know, these things, this whole COVID-19 started with like this case, and this person had this experience. And, you know, we didn't even talk about the psychiatric manifestations, the neurological, the hallucinations from COVID-19. That, again, is hypoxia and other things, not the least of which is the virus itself. So the epidemiology is that you have 100,000 people who have had it now. And how many of them are male? How many of them are female? How many of them are over 65? How many of them are obese, BMI? How many of those are hypoxic, how many of those are, and of those that are over 65, how many have more than 3 children? How many of those have a low economic status? How many of those have no natural environment, no nature? How many of those have this? How many of those have that? And from that, we compare, well, these have low SES, and these have low SES, and these have low SES. You know what I'm saying? So we get, of all the things that we find commonalities. So basically people who are struggling to survive. And what does that low SES cause? What does that low SES cause? Amygdala. And what does the amygdala do? Lower oxygen levels. And what do lower oxygen levels do? It destroys our mitochondria. So as far as I can tell, all roads lead to mitochondria. This is a mitochondrial virus. This is a mitochondrial virus. We know that. I will remind you just before we tap out at 3 minutes that this virus comes in with a 5-dimer leader RNA, and that's no coincidence. That's no coincidence that it says leader, as in this leads the pack, and a 3-dimer, transcribe or associate RNA. And this 5-dimer leader goes to the mitochondria. It goes in the mitochondria and produces the big. Without this, nothing would happen. It also goes into the mitochondria from this, they produce the double membrane vesicles. And what's a double membrane vesicle? That's the thing that carries the virus around, right? And what does this do? From my understanding, it goes into the nucleus of our cell, and produces the proteins that add these guys on and other things in the virus. So that's what we have. COVID-19 is a non-living thing. It's a composition of elements that are moving in on the planet we have created, and the biological de-evolution, the biological flip we have made in our own needs. We have flipped our environment from mostly oxygen, let's call this then, and now mostly oxygen, a lot of hydration, and some glucose. We have flipped that. We are mostly glucose, some hydration. If we eat well, we get it from from our eating, and we are barely breathing. So we have flipped. We have flipped it, and this is the mitochondria world, and this is the COVID-19 world. Okay, so it's in our hands. Knowledge is power. Etiology is power and knowledge. All right, thank you very much, and blessings to you all today.